Well, hi, I'm John Byrne with Poets and Quants. Welcome to our MBA Watch Profile of the Week, sponsored by Gatehouse Admissions. Today we have a really interesting candidate. He calls himself Mr. Big Chill. Jumbo GMAT 770, has a degree from the University of Edinburgh in accounting and finance. He's a senior broker in Singapore, and his target school is INSEAD. And to assess him today, we have Rachel Nelson from Gatehouse. Hi, Rachel. How are you doing today?
I'm good, John. How are you?
Very good. Now, I should point out that Rachel has worked for a number of Fortune 50 companies. She has been a Harvard College interviewer because she is an alum of Harvard College and has an MBA from Wharton. So she's a great expert at MBA admissions. And I'm really looking forward to seeing, what do you really think about this guy?
Well, happy to tell you. So I guess high level, I think Mr. Big Chill has a very interesting work history.
Yes.
He's got great numbers. And I would also say he's been able to make a really meaningful impact at work. And I think he's got some interesting side hobbies. He mentions being an activist in the area of animal rights. So always really good to see passion. And I think it helps us in the admissions committee to get a sense of who he is and what motivates him. The things that I think are challenges for him, first is his goals are very vague, and they need to be much better defined. And I think that would also help us to understand why he needs an MBA.
Yeah.
Second thing is he shows maybe a little bit of an ego, probably riding high on his 770. So I would love for him to tone that down a little bit and maybe show us some of his people skills. So it seems clear from what he said that he's very good about driving results, which is great. And I'd love to see a little bit about not just what he achieves, but how he gets it done. And that's also maybe how he can kind of pull in some of his hobbies and extracurriculars. So kind of my headline for him is not to get too caught up in his numbers and in his GMAT.
Yeah.
You know, would really like to see his application show us who he is. And if he doesn't kind of give us some sense of who he is beyond the numbers, then I think he's going to have a tough road at INSEAD.
Now, the other interesting thing about this guy is he's Asian or he's Indian. And we know that applicant pools of every elite MBA program are oversubscribed with Indian and Asian applicants. Does that put him in a certain bucket that makes it more difficult?
So I think good news for him is he's got a very competitive GMAT score even in that group.
Yes.
But we say this for everybody, but the story does matter. And that's where the more that he can make himself kind of come to life, the better off he'll be. But I would say he's positioned fine in terms of kind of his cohort group. Usually the challenge is if you have numbers that are less than, but his numbers are kind of right on or above the average even for his cohort. So that's a good story for him.
So, most candidates say, okay, here's my first choice school, but here are other targets that I have. In Mr. Big Chill's case, he's only naming INSEAD. And I wonder, given that jumbo GMAT score and given what he's doing in Singapore as a senior broker, having worked himself out of London where he was a trader, whether or not he's selling himself a little short and not picking a broader range of schools. What do you think? What other schools should be on his target list?
Everybody should always have other schools on their list, no matter how stellar you are. INSEAD is a competitive school. Second thing is, what are his goals? So if he is looking, I think he mentioned not being in the US ultimately. So it's not to say that he couldn't apply to a Columbia or to a Wharton and then ultimately go work, somewhere in Europe, somewhere in the Middle East, Asia,
Mm-hmm.
both also competitive. So
Right.
I would say the challenge, INSEAD, Wharton, Columbia, for everybody, even with a 770, you should be prepared that you might not get into any of those three. So I would just say to him, applying to one, applying to three competitive schools, unless you cast your net a little bit wider, just don't be shocked if you don't have a seat.
And London Business School, too, I would think, is natural for him, given his financial interest.
Yeah, I would say LBS is a great option as well.
So, Rachel, bottom line, what do you think are his odds of getting into INSEAD?
Bottom line is, if you can address the things that we've talked about, I see him probably 50%.
That's pretty good.
But I would say that's based on him putting together an application that shows his people skills, tones down the ego, and really kind of shows us, why business school and what he wants to do beyond that.
Great. Rachel, thank you.
Thanks, John.
All right, there you have it, everybody. I think this candidate is similar to other people out there, right? You got a big GMAT score and you think you're riding high. You got to tone down and your attitude and come off as humble and appealing is one thing. Second thing is those post-MBA goals should be crystal clear so that an admissions committee could see why you want the MBA and why that degree will get you where you want to go. And finally, pick a few more schools. You know, you might want to diversify the range of schools you apply to, because even if you have your heart set on one given school, given the randomness of elite MBA admissions, you just can't count on it. This is John Byrne with Poets and Quants with our MBA Profile of the Week, sponsored by Gatehouse Admissions. Thanks for watching.